Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's a great honor to be invited to GDT Research meeting. I'm glad to have a chance to share with you our work on S chemistry. My presentation is the role of radiocarbon on flow property of coal-S in gasification. It is an example of fact-sheet application in our study. My presentation includes these 6 parts. First of all, I'd like to say something about fact sheets in RCCCS. We started to use fact sheets in our work in 2009, and the version is the fact sheet 6.1. In the next more than 10 years, we have used version 6.4 to 7.0. In 2018, we purchased the new version fact sheet 7.2 from GDT Technologies. And last month, we updated our fact sheet to the new version 8.1. The most frequently used in our work are phase diagram and equilibrium. Uh, in our work, we want to use phase diagram to know the primary phase of coal-S at temperature and the mineral composition and the liquid's temperature of coal-S. Let's see the background of our work. Coal is very important for China and it is the primary energy and a reliable resource. In the last 5 years, the consumption ratio of coal in total energy is more than 50%. Although this ratio decreased in recent years, the total amount of coal consumption increased. In 2020, China used more than 28 million tons coal, and it is expected that coal is still the primary energy in the next 30 years. According to a report by Sinopec in 2009, coal-based chemical will become an important purpose of coal utilization. The proportion of chemical for coal utilization will increase from 7% in 2017 to 30% in 2015. It will be increased about 4.3 times. Coal gasification is an effective way to achieve this goal, and by gasification we can use syngas to produce many different chemicals, and also can be used for FG synthesis to produce oil. Slagging gasifier is widely used in coal gasification plants. I listed 3 types of slagging gasifiers here. They are BDL, Tesco cell gasifiers. The flow property of coal-S is an important parameter for coal selection and operation of these slagging gasifiers. Let's see an example. For the BDL gasifier, the flow temperature of coal-S should be lower than 4000 degree, and the slag viscosity should be no more than 5 pascal seconds at 5000 degree. And when we studied the role of radiocarbon on slag flow property of coal-S in gasification, the left figure shows the slag formation in entrant flow gasifiers. Coal first pyrolyzed into char, and char then gasified into syngas. The mineral matters in coal transformed into S, and then S melted at temperature to form slags. However, the coal char cannot be gasified, cannot completely gasified into coal-S. Besides, there are interaction between char and slag. As a result, radiocarbon becomes an important component in coal-S. We collected 3 kinds of slags from moving dead slagging gasifiers. Slag 1 is normal slags from gasifiers. They are small particles and with a low content of radiocarbon. Slag 2 and Slag 3 are the abnormal slags from the gas files, and slag 3 is the blockade slags in gasifiers. We can see there are many radiocarbons in the slag and also unreacted limestones. We analyzed the property of minerals in these three kind of slags. This table shows that the three slags have similar chemical compositions. The content of calcium is almost the same, which implies that limestone will react with CoS in gasifiers. However, the XRD patterns of these three slags are different. The minerals in slag 1 is almost amorphous matters, and the minerals in slag 2 and slag 3 are crystallines. In addition, there are a lot of crystalline phase in slag 3. This result demonstrates that radiocarbon prevents fusion of CoS in gasifiers. And we use SEM to investigate the interaction between slag and radiocarbon. For the normal slags, it also has some radiocarbon, but the particle is very small. However, for the abnormal slag, slag 2 and slag 3, they have metallic ion evasion of char by melting slag and the interface of char and slag. In our previous work, we studied the effect of radiocarbon content on its fusibilities, and we found that the increase of radiocarbon usually leads to the increase of its fusion temperature. After that, we wanted to know the relationship between chemical composition of CoS and the effect of radiocarbon on its fusibilities. And this slide shows the effect of I content on effect of radiocarbon content on its fusibility. It can be seen that when the I content of CoS is no more than 8%, the EFT increased with increasing content of radiocarbon. It is similar to that in our previous work. However, when the I content is more than 12%, the EFT is the first increase as the radiocarbon content increase, while the flow temperature decrease when the radiocarbon content increased from 10% to 15%. It shows another trend. The feasibility of CoS is largely dependent on mineral composition of CoS at high temperature, and fact sheets can be used to calculate the mineral composition of CoS. So we used the fact sheet to calculate the mineral composition of CoS with different I content and radiocarbons. And this slide shows the calculation result of CoS with 4% I content. Compared with the CoS without radiocarbon, 4 new minerals were formed in S with radiocarbon. Besides, as the radiocarbon content increased, the content of silicon carbonate increased. As we know, the melting temperature of silicon carbonate is very high. It is higher than 2000 degrees, and this accounts for the increase of fusion temperatures. This slide shows the calculated result of CoS with a high I content, 16%, compared with the result of CoS with 4% I content. The CoS with radiocarbon has the same mineral compositions, while more metallic iron was formed at high temperatures. In addition, when the radiocarbon content increased from 10% to 15%, the content of silicon increased significantly because the melting temperature of silicon is lower than that of silicon carbonate. It is about 1400 degree. This can explain the decrease of EFT when the radiocarbon content increased from 10 to 15. We also investigate the effect of radiocarbon on slag viscosity, and we use graphite to simulate the radiocarbon in gasification slag. And these two figures show that the slag viscosity and the temperature of critical viscosity increase with increasing content of radiocarbon. And the effect of radiocarbon on slag viscosity becomes significant when the content is more than 3%. Besides, the radiocarbon also turns slag into crystalline slag. All this is bad for slag discharge in the gas files. And after slag viscosity, we cut the crucible, and the slag with and without graphite show different appearance. The slag without graphite looks like glass, and well, the slag with 5% and 9% graphite shows another appearance. The XRD pattern shows that the mineral composition is also different. For the slag without graphite, it shows amorphous characteristic, and quartz was found in slag with 3% graphite. When the graphite content increased to 5% to 9%, molybdenum and silicon carbonate were found in the found. The component of CoS is very complex. The mineral matter in CoS can react with each other at high temperatures, and the carbon can also react with minerals. So we wanted to know which reaction is preferred to occur at high temperatures. We use fact sheets to calculate dirty reactions at high temperatures. And the results show that the formation of arsenic is favorable between 1200 and 1600 degrees, and silicon oxide prefer to react with aluminum to form molybdenum rather than to react with graphite. For different minerals at high temperatures, carbonate reactions between silicon oxide and graphite is easier than that between arsenic, molybdenum, and graphite. This is a summary of my presentation. There are interactions between radiocarbon and slag. The presence of radiocarbon can influence at fusibility and slag viscosity, which is also influenced by high content of CoS. FactSheets is a useful tool to reveal the reaction between radiocarbon and minerals in CoS, and to account for the role of radiocarbon on flow property of CoS. For this work, I want to say thanks to financial funding from NSSC, MOSTC, Science Province, and Cell Gasification, the group members in RCCCS. I'd like to say thank you to faculty staff Professor Zaimin Cao in USTB and Professor In Hongzhou in McGill University. At the beginning, I started to use fact sheets. I have a lot of questions and send many emails to them, and they gave me a lot of help to use fact sheets. That's all my presentation. Thank you for your attention.